BD here, welcome back to the YouTube channel, and in this video we are talking about Creature Commandos. The first 2 episodes are available now. I've seen the whole season, all 7 episodes, so no predictions from me, but I will share my thoughts on these 2 episodes, as well as spoiler-free thoughts on the season as a whole, some comic insights, and some insights from James Gunn and the cast themselves. So if you like this video, please hit the thumbs up, share your thoughts on Creature Commandos in the comment section, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. First of all, this episode starts with Xerxes, a witch out of Themyscira, attacking Pokolistan. Xerxes debuted in DC Comics more than 70 years ago. I'm most interested to see if she becomes a factor in the Themyscira series that was promised when James Gunn announced the Gods and Monsters project that the DC Universe is building. But also Pokolistan. It's a fake European nation from the pages of DC Comics. In fact, Maria Bakalova, the voice of the princess in the series, was the first person cast in the DC Universe, with Creature Commandos being the start of it, because she speaks Bulgarian and James Gunn wanted to find somebody who speaks another language so then he could cast the rest of the people around her to also speak that language.
The first person ever cast in the DCU was Maria, who, like, we had to cast her immediately because, because everybody in Pokolistan had to speak the same language, and I needed to make sure Maria could do it, and if she could, then they would all be speaking Bulgarian. So she was the very first person that we offered a role to.
Pokolistan in comics has been tied to Superman and Zod, which clearly is not exactly the case in Creature Commandos, but it's still just a fun nod to lore from the comics. I think it's awesome that the show has a jumping off point that just is clearly reminiscent of the Suicide Squad, not just because they're riding on an Osprey helicopter, but because there are outright references to the Suicide Squad, which is like loosely canon now, with this being the new DC Universe officially. The reference included humans being part of a task force like this being illegal since the events of Corto Maltese, which is obviously where James Gunn's The Suicide Squad sent its cast of characters on a mission. There are specific references to Joel Kinnaman's Rick Flag Jr., the son of Frank Grillo's Rick Flag Sr., and how he passed away in that movie. And rather than being called Task Force X, this group is called Task Force M for monsters, because they're the Creature Commandos, but it's also a reference to Project M, which is what the creatures would have to essentially sign themselves over to as property in the Creature Commandos comic. This comic, which came out in March of 2000 and is the first Creature Commandos comic, is only loosely inspiring this show if I can interpret it properly. In fact, the Creature Commandos actually debuted in 1980 with a story set in World War II, and we saw shades of World War II already in the montage with Frankenstein at the end of episode 2, and we're going to see more of that with G.I. Robot and other stories that are coming up in the show. I will say the scene where the Flag and the Creature Commandos walk into the palace and meet the princess felt very similar to what James Gunn did in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, when Star-Lord walked into Aisha's palace and met her, and was clearly caught off guard by being attracted to her and was a little bit flirty, but also acting like he wasn't flirty for Gamora. It felt like that same timing and type of dialogue was injected into the scene, and it had James Gunn's fingerprints all over it. At this point, I was thinking the princess was coming on to Rick Flag a little too strongly for it to not be a little suspect, like she's got a plan or some need to win him over. But we'll see if I was right on that. I just wanted to say that's what I was thinking early on. And then the bride goes off to basically the place she was created, where she was created to be Frankenstein's, and a woman in a cabin calls Frankenstein to alert him that she's back, but that woman in the cabin had a Zac Efron screensaver, and actually that picture of Zac Efron was from 2014's MTV Movie Awards when he won Best Shirtless Performance Award, an award that was only given out 3 times ever. He won it for Neighbors in 2014, and actually I think this might have been on James Gunn's mind, because another nominee in that category that year was Chris Pratt as Star-Lord. And that leads us directly into episode 2, which is where we get the flashbacks of Bride. And I thought those were incredible, but like really brutal and tragic. Incredible storytelling in the weight of what they're delivering, because Frankenstein is this crazy stalker. And meanwhile, Victor, not really that normal of a guy either. Like, he created the Bride with good intentions to give Frankenstein love, but also then he was like, oops, I made her hot. I love her now. I don't know. The whole thing was kind of weird, and it just really shows you where Bride is at and the things she's been through, especially when Frankenstein acts up and, does what he does to Victor. And on the flip side of the getting it on spectrum, Rick Flag and the princess get it on in the bathroom, and they're actually really enjoying themselves, and Phosphorus is a real one, being a metaphorical sock on the door for them. And the cast seems to have had a hell of a lot of fun with how they performed that scene, because they actually recorded it over Zoom, and I talked to them about it. Watch this.
But I videotaped them on Zoom. because I had to turn on my mute because I couldn't stop laughing, and they're making out with their hands, and they're like, oh no.
Come to discover. That's now the only way I want to have.
You imprinted on that moment.
Frankenstein, by the way, is great on screen because of David Harbour, in my opinion. He brings this, like, ridiculous, out of touch, like, childish voice to the character that is also weird. And you can't root for him, but you're like, oh, he's clearly not right. And I also know that they redesigned Frankenstein after hearing David Harbour perform the part because they liked what he was doing so much and they wanted to have a design for Frankenstein in Creature Commandos that better fit what they thought Harbour's voice was doing with it. And of course, episode 2 ends with a needle drop. We had a needle drop in episode 1 for Rick Flag and Phosphorus' fight, which I thought was a good action scene. And then we had another needle drop in episode 2 for Xerxes versus the Bride. And I will say, I don't think these needle drops worked super well for me as well as things typically do in James Gunn movies. I think Guardians of the Galaxy is the gold standard of that for me. I thought the Suicide Squad did a good job with it. This is probably one of the weakest needle drop type environments for me with James Gunn. That's not to say they took away from the scene. It just didn't get me like fired up and then or comedically charmed as they typically do. But then once the sad piano music started playing, I was like, no. Nina Mazursky is way too innocent based on her voice alone. And when we paired that with seeing the bride's history and she's just getting pummeled by Xerxes, I was like, there's no way. There's no way they're about to show us what she's been through and then kill her off. But it's James Gunn, so they might. And sure enough, the episode ends with both of them seemingly dying on the sidewalk. I don't know how they survived that. No, I've seen what's next. I'm not going to predict anything. I'm just going to say that's a wonderful cliffhanger. And Nina's words at the end of the episode, I was like, whoa, she's pissed. So, yeah. Just a really good way to end the episode. I thought the action scenes were good. I wanted to like the needle drop a little bit more. I liked the needle drop in episode 1's fight scene with Rick Flag and Phosphorus a bit more than the episode 2 one, but neither of them really blew me away, but neither of them took me out of it either. All in all, I think releasing 2 episodes as a premiere was the smart thing to do because episode 1 had a lot of heavy lifting to do in terms of introducing the characters, introducing the concept of the show, and just getting us started with the Creature Commandos. While episode 2 was able to implement the structure of flashbacks and getting to know the characters, which is more of what we're going to see going forward. I think it was really wise to have that cliffhanger as the end of the premiere and get us acquainted with the bride. She's hands down my favorite character. I'm wearing my The Bride dog tag here that I got at New York Comic Con. And then I'd say Rick Flag is my second favorite character so far. But overall, it's just fun, it's weird, it's silly, and I think it needed to be 2 episodes because I don't think 1 would have been enough to hook a lot of people. And instead you get 40 plus minutes instead of 20 something. So were these episodes good? And what do I rate them out of 10? I would say they were good. I don't know if I'd journey into like really great territory with these, but I would say they were good. I think, like I said, Bride is my favorite character. Rick Flag number 2. Nina's going to be the heart there early on is what it feels like. Frankenstein's entertaining and terrifying. The flashbacks are tragic. That's a really good structure. As somebody who loves the TV show Lost, I'm all for flashbacks developing characters like this. And I really appreciate James Gunn's adult-oriented style. Obviously, we all know this guy has a more mature-oriented sense of humor and style, and I appreciate that he's fearless and doesn't hold back in it, whether it's with the violence, whether it's with the sense of humor. Like, this isn't crossing into Deadpool level of raunchiness, but it is adult-oriented animation, and I think that's cool. I mean, he's got sex scenes right out of the gate. He's got violence. He's got all kinds of stuff in there, and I appreciate that James Gunn is just unabashedly James Gunn in a project like this, and I feel like it really afforded him the luxury to do whatever he wanted. It's animated, and I dig it. That said, I'm giving these first 2 episodes a 7.5 out of 10. They were good. I enjoyed them. As for the season as a whole, I'm going to say it gets better as it goes and then peaks in episodes 4 and 5. I thought episode 4 specifically was my favorite. 5 was also magnificent. And this isn't to say that 6 and 7 end up being a weak ending for Creature Commandos or some sort of weak finale, but I think those 2 episodes were so good that it was hard to match them. And then the ending, it's good. I'm not saying more than that. I don't even want to tip my hat a little bit because people will read into it and start guessing what happens and stuff like that. Overall, I think the series is very good. I think it's a very interesting launching point for the new DC universe. Part of me is like, is it a mistake to launch a new universe with an animated series? I don't know that it matters that much because people are going to go see Superman regardless of whether or not they watch Creature Commandos. I think everybody who watches Creature Commandos is going to go see Superman, but everybody who goes see Superman is not going to watch Creature Commandos. Like a portion of that Superman audience is going to watch this, but I think you got it. So I think the universes and franchises have yet to figure out how to do stories and canon that are connected both at the theater and on the small screen at home in a way that audiences are enjoying consuming. The Batman universe did it quite well, so DC is the first one actually that I would say nailed it, but the audience is obviously not as big for the Penguin as it was for the Batman. Two separate DC universes. We'll see how this lands. I enjoyed this season. I enjoyed these first 2 episodes, and I'm excited to hear from you what you thought. What did you think of the first 2 episodes of Creature Commandos? Do you have questions about them that you want me to answer in another video? And have you watched my interview with James Gunn and the cast yet? Because it's so much fun, and it's available on the channel right now. Please continue to subscribe to the channel because we have more DC Comics content coming. I promise you it's going to be fun and exciting. More Creature Commandos reviews, and just all sorts of fun stuff. So tune in for episodes of Face Hero and more. I'm BD. I'll see you in the next video.